Welcome to Building the $1 Billion Business, the podcast where we dive deep into the strategies, insights, and stories behind the world's most successful financial advisors and introduce content and actionable ideas to fuel your growth. Together, we'll unlock the methods, tactics, and mindset shifts that set the top 1% apart from the rest. I'm Sclafani, and I'll be your host. I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that the wealth management industry is entering one of the largest leadership transitions in its entire history. And yet, most firms are thinking about succession the wrong way. Succession in advisory firms is rarely a transaction challenge. It is almost always a leadership capacity issue. Another professional services industry has already found a solution to this great challenge. Let's point to the legal profession for a moment, who has created a model for the passage to partnership in which leadership development is separate and apart from ownership succession. Currently, among the top 100 largest law firms, 86% have a structure that includes non-equity partner status. These are individuals who are partners in their organizations. They lead client relationships, mentor younger professionals, even generate revenue for their firms, and participate in leadership discussions, yet may not necessarily be owners of their enterprises. In fact, according to the American Bar Association, check this out, non-equity partners do not necessarily have a say in their organizational's governance, but they do hold the responsibilities and status associated with being a partner. Thomson Reuters and Georgetown Law conducted a study. Non-equity partners now account for 19% of the total number of attorneys at larger law firms. Leadership development and ownership succession are both important issues, yet they are not the same. You see, responsibility can precede ownership, leadership capacity should precede ownership, and the passages to partnership most certainly should precede ownership. And this is where wealth advisory firms can learn an important lesson from the legal profession. Not all outstanding leaders within your firm need to be equity owners. Some professionals within your firm may not have access to the capital necessary to buy into the firm. Others may not want the financial risk and obligations associated with being an equity owner of your firm. That does not diminish their contributions to your firm. In many professional services firms, such leaders are recognized as income partners. They are treated as equity owners and they hold responsibility such as an equity owner, but they lead in client relationships. They guide and mentor younger professionals within the firm. They play a key role in driving revenue and shaping the firm's culture. They just may not be shareholders. They may be profits interest owners, certainly income owners. Wealth advisory firms can take a valuable lesson from the legal profession's approach to identifying and advancing income partners. Not all leaders need to be these equity owners, but there seems to be this race to fast track next generation leaders to owners. Maybe it's something I'm just observing, but maybe it's because founders and controlling owners want liquidity. I don't think that's the real reason, but it certainly could come into play. I believe and have seen firsthand so many controlling owners and founders who have made many implicit promises for a very long time, so much so that now their backs are up against the wall. They're losing top talent or just having to fast track the next generation to become owners, whether they're ready or not. This approach has so many unintended consequences, and not all are good. But all firms need leaders who act like partners, whether they own equity or not. In other words, founders and controlling owners who are listening right now, you must start this process as early as possible. Be explicit as to what those passages are, what skills, competencies, and experiences must advance for every leader toward ownership, and use the income partnership as a stop, a milestone maybe along the way of what might be a longer journey to equity ownership for some, but doesn't have to end with equity ownership for all. Being an income partner has its advantages as well. There's no doubt that our profession is undergoing this period of great change. McKinsey's research has found that the wealth management industry is going to be short 90 to 110,000 wealth management professionals by the year 2034 unless the industry significantly improves its recruiting and leading talent, both wealth advisors and also next generation leaders. The problem the wealth management profession is going through is not generational. It's actually structural. It is the profession's ability to build the leadership necessary within the firm to take the firm into the future. I was at a recent Houlihan Lokey summit and on stage with a number of key leaders, just having a conversation with the larger audience about what percentage of your revenues are you pouring back into your leadership and development program. It's interesting to note that so many firms have an anemic, very small percentage of dollars they're willing to invest back in formal leadership development programs. Increasingly, clients and investors are noticing this gap. A company that depends solely on a few controlling owners or founders is quite different from one that has a strong team of leaders and a bench strength of talent that's being developed to propel the firm forward. Here at ClientWise, we work with advisory firms and ask them to think about the future of their businesses, and we ask them to stop thinking about developing only equity owners and start thinking about developing next generation leaders and next generation owners, income partners and equity owners. Remember, all owners will be partners, but not all partners will be owners. This is an important distinction. And then let me go one step further. I always chuckle when I hear labels like G1, G2, G3. This only adds more obscurity than it does to clarify where everybody is in a next generation track. In fact, we just simply say broadly, the next generation set of leaders. We're actually working with a firm right now. They have a 43-year-old career changer who entered into the profession later in life. In fact, this is his second career after the military and is, air quote, a G3. Well, they also have a 33-year-old advisor who started right after college with their firm and has now been on the team for over a decade, mentoring colleagues, leading initiatives, generating revenue. Okay, so which of these two people is the future of the firm? This firm calls that team, that person, that 33-year-old a G2, yet the 43-year-old on a second career who has a tremendous amount of leadership experience a G3? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have anything to do with age. In fact, it has everything to do with readiness. The next generation is not determined by birth order. Instead, it is defined by the people within the firm who can lead the company into the future. These are the individuals who strengthen client relationships. They recruit and mentor the next generation professionals. They cultivate the firm's culture and expand the enterprise beyond the founder, current founder, or controlling owners. And that is where the problem is for most organizations. Most teams want the next generation of talent, but what they really need is assistance. They seek someone to serve the clients. They want someone to help the founder or controlling owner ease the workload they've carried for so long. Remember, relief is not the same as leadership. If you seek leadership, it must be clearly defined. It needs to be named, identified, and understood. And this is where language really matters. Let me share another thought with you. Many firms use this phrase, path to partnership. Yeah, Ray, we've got our path to partnership. Well, I always struggle with this word, path to partnership. The word path is a phrase, it's a word that often causes emerging leaders to believe they are on the path and that partnership is just a matter of time and guaranteed. And that is rarely the case. Partnership should never be implied. Partnership must never be assumed. And partnership must certainly never be taken as an entitlement. We use a different phrase at ClientWise. You probably heard me earlier in this episode talk about passages. We call it the passages to partnership. In fact, we think there are about 5 of these passages. Your firm may have 2 or 3 or 6 or 7, but I'll share with you what I've learned along the way. A path also implies a journey to a place where all arrive at the end of the day. A passage implies a set of developmental stages through which individuals progress as they increasingly prove themselves in terms of contributions and trust and leadership and accountability. All partners must pass through these passages. However, not all individuals who enter the passages will ultimately become a partner. Partnership is not a reward for effort. Partnership is a business decision based on leadership capacity and enterprise stewardship. The purpose of the passages is not to promise partnership. The purpose is to build leaders. As individuals progress through the passages, they build experience, accountability, perspective, and they expand the capacity to better serve the client, to better develop others, and to understand the economics of the firm. Some of these individuals will ultimately prove themselves sufficiently to become partners. Others will become extraordinary professionals and leaders within the firm without ever having equity ownership, both of which make the organization stronger. Once these passages are clearly defined, partnership becomes less of a mystery. Partnership becomes less political, and it becomes what it ought to be, a leadership outcome based on demonstrated ability. So what are the actual steps of these passages? Well, I'm going to share these with you. The first passage is contribution. Does this individual have the ability to contribute on a regular basis? Not on occasion, not when it's easy, but on a regular basis. The second passage is trust transfers, and there's two types, internal and external. On the internal side, can they transfer trust to colleagues and to others inside the team? And externally, can this individual transfer trust to clients? The third passage is leadership behaviors. Does this individual elevate the room? Does this individual uplift others and think about the firm first? Does this individual display maturity as decisions become complex? The fourth passage is economic accountability. Does this individual understand the enterprise model? Do they understand margin? Do they understand the individual capacity of others in the organization? Do they understand what the drivers of enterprise value are? Do they understand the leadership that equates to economic results and connect the dots? And then the fifth passage is ownership readiness. Has this individual demonstrated the ability to think, behave, and act like an owner? Whether they are on track as an equity owner or not, this ownership mindset is critical. Well, that's the process. And the process begins much earlier than organizations think. Not when the founder or controlling owners are exhausted, not when succession has become imminent, way earlier. Leadership readiness begins with responsibility, leading a client meeting, managing a segment of the client base, participating in a strategic conversation, mentoring a young professional, leading an initiative to move the firm forward. These should be performative opportunities. They're not symbolic activities. They're not diagnostic activities. These are activities to determine how this individual performs as responsibility increases. Too many founders and controlling owners make the same mistake. They protect the emerging leader from responsibility in the name of protecting the client experience. However, they often ask later why no one might be ready. But readiness is developed with tension. So be clear about the passages. Be clear early. Be clear often. Be clear concretely. Maybe the 5 passages I outlined are a good starting point for you to define for your own firm what are the passages inside your organization. You want to communicate as early as possible what are the capabilities that must be demonstrated. Share with people on the team what are the expectations that must be met over the next 12 or 24 months if somebody is interested in being considered to be put on those passage toward partnership. Clarity has 2 main effects. Number 1, it gives the right people something to run toward. And number 2, it often will reveal those in the organization who are more interested in advancement than responsibility. For the goal is not merely to grow the number of partners. The goal is to build an enduring firm. Enduring firms do not confuse age with readiness, nor do they confuse loyalty with leadership. They don't confuse professional skill with ownership readiness. Instead, they build the future intentionally. So who is part of the next generation of leaders in your firm? It is the person or people already growing beyond their current position. It's those who earn the trust, expand capacity, and think like a steward of the firm. It is the people who are not asking, what do I get next? But are asking the question, what can I help build next? It is those in your organization that you place on the passages to partnership who are demonstrating already that they're ready. Not because they're next in line, but because they are next in leadership. With each episode, I typically introduce a few coaching questions for consideration. And as you think about your own firm today, consider the following 3 questions. First, if the founder or founders or controlling owners step down tomorrow, how many leaders would realistically be needed to fill the roles they currently hold? Number 2, who in your organization is already demonstrating an ownership mindset, the leadership behaviors, and even if they're not officially income or equity owners, who are those people today? And number 3, finally, have you defined the passages to partnership within your own organization, or are your emerging leaders left to figure it out on their own? Well, thanks for tuning in, and that's a wrap. Until next time, this is Ray Sclafani. Keep building, growing, and striving for greatness. Together, we'll redefine what's possible in the world of wealth management. Be sure to check back for our latest episode and article.